Humans have always been obsessed with curing disease. Unfortunately, we were also catastrophically bad at it for most of history. From drilling holes into people's skulls to blowing tobacco smoke into their rectums, our ancestors tried everything, and a shocking number of those treatments were worse than the diseases they were meant to cure. Today, we're counting down the 50 dumbest medical treatments people actually tried. And trust me, by the time we reach number 1, you'll never look at natural remedies the same way again. You've got a headache, maybe some anxiety, or, demons living inside your skull. The obvious solution, according to ancient medicine, was trepanation, drilling or scraping a hole into your head to release evil spirits or balance the body's humors. This practice dates back over 7,000 years, with skulls from Neolithic Europe, Africa, and South America showing signs of deliberate drilling and, terrifyingly, signs of healing. That means many people survived this procedure. Even the ancient Greeks and Romans thought trepanation could treat epilepsy, migraines, or mental illness. Of course, it did none of those things. But hey, nothing says healthcare like a DIY lobotomy with a rock. If there's one thing humanity loves, it's the promise of eternal life. And in ancient China, that came in the form of liquid mercury. Alchemists swore it could grant immortality and heal disease. Spoiler, it couldn't. The most famous victim was Qin Shi Huang, China's first emperor, who died after ingesting mercury pills designed to make him live forever. Ironically, they sped him toward an early grave. And he wasn't alone. Nobles and emperors across Asia consumed mercury tonics, unaware they were literally poisoning themselves from the inside out. Symptoms included tremors, madness, and organ failure. But sure, immortality sounds worth it, right up until your kidneys melt. This isn't a metaphor. Doctors in the 18th century Europe literally blew tobacco smoke into patients' rectums to treat everything from constipation to drowning. The idea was that nicotine would stimulate respiration and revive vital organs. The treatment became so popular that tobacco enema kits were placed along the River Thames to help rescue drowning victims. But reality soon set in. Far from saving lives, they often cause nicotine poisoning and internal burns. So the next time someone accuses you of blowing smoke, remember, it used to be a medical procedure. The ancient Egyptians were brilliant engineers and mathematicians, but their birth control methods? Not so much. Around 1850 BCE, women were advised to insert crocodile dung into the vagina as a contraceptive barrier. It was thought the dung's consistency would block sperm, and while it might have created a physical barrier, it also created a world-class infection risk. Researchers believe the pH may have even increased the chance of pregnancy, because nothing says romance like crocodile poop. In the 19th century, women were routinely diagnosed with hysteria, a vague catch-all for anything men didn't understand. Anxiety, sexual frustration, even boredom. One proposed cure? Zap them with electricity. Electrotherapy machines were marketed as cutting-edge treatments that could reset the nervous system. Patients were strapped in and shocked on various parts of their bodies, including their reproductive organs. Far from curing anything, these devices mostly caused burns and trauma. It was less healing energy and more Victorian torture chamber. Got a stutter? No problem. 19th century doctors had the perfect solution: cut out half your tongue. The theory was that reducing tongue mass would improve articulation. The reality? Most patients were left unable to speak at all, or bled to death from the brutal procedure. Surgeons proudly reported their work in medical journals, right up until people realized that fixing speech by removing the organ that produces it was, in fact, insane. If you thought drinking your own urine was a TikTok trend, think again. It's been around for thousands of years. Ancient Indian Ayurvedic texts claimed urine had healing powers, and even Roman soldiers reportedly used it to clean wounds. Despite zero scientific backing, urine therapy still has modern followers who claim it cures everything from cancer to acne. In reality, it's just waste. Sterile when produced, sure, but absolutely not medicine. You're not detoxing, you're just retoxing. During the Renaissance, Europeans believed life force could be transferred through the body, so they ground up human remains and ate them. Mummy powder from Egyptian tombs was especially prized, mixed into drinks to treat epilepsy and internal bleeding. Kings and commoners alike swallowed powdered skull, drank human blood, and even rubbed human fat on wounds. It was medicine by cannibalism. And the worst part? It was mainstream. Even the 17th century English King Charles II sipped King's Drops, a tonic made from human skulls. For centuries, pale skin meant wealth and beauty. The best way to get it? Smearing white lead all over your face. Romans used it, Elizabethan nobles used it, and so did 18th century French aristocrats. Lead gave the skin a ghostly glow, right up until it caused neurological damage, hair loss, blackened teeth, and death. Women would apply layer upon layer, poisoning themselves a little more every day, all for the sake of looking like a powdered corpse. In the 1920s, quack Dr. John Brinkley convinced thousands of men he could cure impotence by implanting goat testicles into their scrotums. Yes, really. Despite having no medical license, Brinkley performed hundreds of these bizarre surgeries and built a radio empire promoting his miracle cure. Unsurprisingly, it didn't work, and many patients suffered infections, organ damage, or worse. Brinkley died disgraced, but his legacy remains one of the most infamous scams in medical history. So far, we've drilled skulls, drunk poison, and inserted goat parts where they don't belong. But believe it or not, medicine was about to get even dumber, and far more disgusting. If you thought ancient dentistry was barbaric, wait until you hear this one. In ancient Egypt, doctors treated toothaches by crushing dead mice into a paste and applying it directly to the gums. Yes, you heard that right. Their solution to an infected mouth was to shove rotting rodent puree into it. The logic was simple, and by simple, I mean idiotic. Animals were thought to possess natural healing energies. So if a mouse was small and nimble, maybe its essence would scurry through your body and cure your toothache. Of course, in reality, this treatment probably introduced more bacteria and infections than it cured. Imagine showing up to the dentist today and they say, "Open wide, I've got a fresh batch of mouse smoothie for that molar." When syphilis swept across Europe in the 15th and 16th centuries, doctors had one go-to cure: mercury. They rubbed it on sores, injected it, inhaled it as vapor, and even made patients hold mercury in their mouths. It became so common that a saying was born, "One night with Venus, a lifetime with Mercury." Unfortunately, they weren't joking. The treatment often lasted for months and caused horrific side effects like tooth loss, kidney failure, and death. And worst of all, it didn't work. Syphilis bacteria laughed in the face of mercury, and countless patients died from the cure rather than the disease. Truly peak medicine. In the early 20th century, cigarette companies aggressively marketed smoking as a treatment for asthma and lung conditions. The pitch was that inhaling smoke would open up airways and soothe coughing fits. Brands like Dr. Batty's asthma cigarettes promised relief, and people bought it, puffing away as their lungs slowly collapsed. Of course, we now know smoking causes asthma flare-ups and lung disease, but at the time, doctors even endorsed these products. It's like trying to put out a fire by throwing gasoline on it. Except the fire is your lungs, and the gasoline comes with a Surgeon General's warning. In 19th century England, measles was often treated not with isolation or medical intervention, but with boiled carrots. Doctors believed carrots could soothe the blood and strengthen the body's defenses. Parents dutifully fed carrot mush to their feverish children, and then watched helplessly as the disease progressed exactly as it would have anyway. Measles claimed countless young lives before vaccines were developed, and no amount of root vegetables ever changed that. It's a reminder that intentions don't equal results, especially when your treatment belongs in a soup, not a hospital. In medieval Europe, surgeons had a very direct solution for hemorrhoids: cauterize them with red-hot iron rods. Forget soothing ointments. We're talking literal branding irons applied where the sun doesn't shine. The belief was that burning away the swollen veins would cure the condition permanently. And while it sometimes worked, the agony, infections, and lifelong scarring it caused were often worse than the hemorrhoids themselves. It's hard to imagine the pain, and harder still to believe that people paid for this torture. A flaming poker is many things, but medical device is not one of them. In the 1920s, before the dangers of radiation were well understood, companies sold radioactive water as health tonics. One infamous brand, Radithor, promised to restore vigor and rejuvenate the body. Wealthy elites drank bottle after bottle, convinced they were absorbing life force. One American millionaire, Eben Byers, drank so much Radithor that his bones literally disintegrated. His jaw fell off before he died a slow, horrifying death. Yet even then, some companies kept selling radioactive products, because apparently nothing says vitality like glowing from the inside out. The term snake oil salesman exists for a reason. In 19th century America, charlatans sold bottles of so-called snake oil that promised to cure everything from arthritis to baldness. Most contained nothing but mineral oil, alcohol, and bold-faced lies. The original Chinese remedy did contain omega-3 rich snake fat, but the American version was pure scam. Despite repeated failures, people lined up to hand over their money, desperate for a miracle. This era cemented a truth that still applies today. If someone promises one bottle can cure everything, it probably cures nothing. For nearly 2,000 years, the most common treatment for any illness, literally any, was bloodletting. Fever, bleed. Headache, bleed. Broken leg, still bleed. Doctors believed that removing excess blood would rebalance the body's humors and restore health. Sometimes they used knives. More often, they used leeches, letting them suck patients for hours. Unsurprisingly, many people died, not from their original illness, but from blood loss, infection, or sheer weakness. It wasn't until the 19th century that medicine finally admitted maybe draining someone dry isn't the best cure-all. Ancient Roman doctors believed diseases could be cured by transferring the essence of strong animals into the human body. Their solution for epilepsy? Eat powdered wolf liver. The theory was that wolves were fierce and resilient, so consuming part of them would grant strength to the nervous system. Of course, epilepsy is a complex neurological condition, not a case of missing wolf spirit. No patient was ever cured this way, but the idea persisted for centuries. Because if history teaches us anything, it's that humans love eating random organs and calling it science. Medieval Europeans suffering from rheumatism believed relief could be found not in medicine, but in carrying a live toad around their neck. Patients tied the unfortunate amphibian into a cloth pouch and wore it against their skin, hoping it would absorb the disease. Some believed the toad's life force would draw out the pain. Others thought its warts would attract the illness away from the joints. Unsurprisingly, none of this worked, except maybe to make you smell like a swamp. If nothing else, it proves medieval people had boundless creativity and very little understanding of biology. If you think we've reached peak stupidity, think again. Because next up, doctors start getting creative with science. And by creative, I mean dangerously unhinged. By the mid-20th century, psychiatry had discovered a miracle cure for depression, schizophrenia, and anxiety, cutting chunks out of people's brains. The procedure, called a lobotomy, involved sliding a metal rod through the patient's eye socket and severing connections in the frontal lobe. It was horrifyingly common. American neurologist Walter Freeman performed over 3,500 lobotomies, sometimes in his van, which he proudly called the lobotomobile. Many patients were left permanently disabled, childlike, or catatonic. Some died on the table. The medical community eventually realized that scrambling someone's brain like an omelet wasn't great healthcare, and by the 1970s, lobotomies were largely abandoned. But not before thousands of lives were irreversibly destroyed, all in the name of science. In the late 1800s, German pharmaceutical giant Bayer marketed a revolutionary cough medicine, heroin. They claimed it was a non-addictive alternative to morphine and perfect for children's coughs. Yes, children's. For a while, doctors prescribed it widely, and parents dosed their kids with heroin for colds, bronchitis, and sore throats. The results were predictable. Patients became addicted, and withdrawal symptoms made their original illness look like a walk in the park. By the early 20th century, governments cracked down on heroin in medicine. But the fact that parents once said, "Here, Timmy, take your heroin," shows how disastrously wrong medical consensus can be. Victorian doctors loved diagnosing women with hysteria, a catch-all term for anything they didn't understand, from anxiety to dissatisfaction with their husbands. One of the most absurd treatments? Vibrating chairs. Patients were strapped into mechanical seats that vibrated violently, supposedly to realign the body's energy and soothe the uterus. Some devices targeted specific body parts, and yes, you're imagining correctly. It was pseudoscience at its peak, no evidence, no logic, just a wildly popular business model. Many historians believe these contraptions paved the way for the invention of the electric vibrator, originally a medical tool. If drinking mercury wasn't bad enough, Chinese alchemists also recommended inhaling its vapors to boost health and extend life. The logic? Breathing in the essence of mercury would purify the body and balance the qi. In reality, mercury vapor is even more dangerous than liquid mercury. Inhalation leads to severe neurological damage, tremors, hallucinations, and death. But emperors and scholars continued the practice for centuries, undeterred by the piles of dead alchemists. The irony is brutal. People seeking immortality often died younger because of these treatments. Mercury didn't make anyone live forever, unless you count forever as being sealed in a tomb. Ambergris, a waxy substance produced in the intestines of sperm whales, was one of the most valuable substances in medieval medicine. And yes, it's essentially whale vomit. Doctors prescribed it for headaches, heart disease, epilepsy, and even as an aphrodisiac. Wealthy patients drank it in tonics, believing its rarity gave it special powers. In reality, it had no proven medical effects, though it did become a key ingredient in luxury perfumes. So next time you smell an expensive fragrance, remember, people once drank that scent hoping it would cure them. Spoiler, it didn't. Before anesthesia was invented in the mid-1800s, dentists treated cavities by drilling directly into the tooth, with no pain relief. Patients were strapped into chairs while metal hand drills bored into their nerves. Some dentists used alcohol or opium to dull the pain. Others recommended biting down on a bullet, which is where the phrase comes from. It was agony, often led to infection, and sometimes killed the patient outright. Modern dentistry may be scary, but at least it doesn't involve torture devices and whiskey shots. In ancient Greece, women struggling to conceive were advised to bathe in boar urine, because obviously nothing screams fertility like pig pee. Doctors believed that the boar's virility would transfer to the woman, boosting her chances of pregnancy. Unsurprisingly, this method had zero effect on fertility. What it did do was expose women to dangerous bacteria and infections. And yet, the practice persisted for centuries across different cultures. It's unclear which is worse, the complete lack of science or the smell. In the 1860s, a French chemist named Angelo Mariani had a brilliant idea. Mix Bordeaux wine with cocaine. The result, Vin Mariani, was a sensation. Popes endorsed it. Thomas Edison drank it. Queen Victoria loved it. The drink promised to boost energy, relieve pain, and strengthen the nerves. And, to be fair, it probably did all of that, until the inevitable crash and addiction set in. Cocaine wine quickly became a gateway drug, and governments worldwide banned it by the early 20th century. But the damage was done. The craze even inspired a certain American pharmacist to create his own non-alcoholic cocaine drink, which eventually evolved into Coca-Cola. Long before anyone understood germs or circulation, ancient doctors believed health depended on four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Illness? Clearly too much blood. Solution? Drain it. From Greece to medieval Europe, bloodletting was standard practice for fevers, infections, even childbirth. Some patients lost liters of blood in a single session. George Washington himself died after being bled of nearly half his blood volume during a throat infection. It took over 2,000 years for medicine to realize that draining someone dry probably isn't healing them. In the 19th century, postpartum depression was barely understood, so doctors prescribed the worst possible treatment: forced bed rest for weeks or even months. Women were confined to bed, forbidden from reading, writing, or socializing, under the belief that total rest would calm their minds. Instead, it often made their mental health worse. Author Charlotte Perkins Gilman famously wrote The Yellow Wallpaper based on her own experience with this so-called cure, which nearly drove her insane. It's a stark reminder that ignorance, even when well-intentioned, can be just as harmful as outright malpractice. By now, it's clear medicine wasn't just dumb, it was downright dangerous. But brace yourself, because the next set of treatments weren't ancient mistakes, they were modern disasters. Once upon a time, parents took their kids shoe shopping and blasted their tiny feet with radiation for fun. Enter the X-ray shoe fitting machine, a 1930s invention that let shoppers see how well a shoe fit by looking at the bones inside. The catch? No one was wearing lead aprons. Customers and employees were exposed to dangerous doses of radiation daily. Sales clerks who stood near these machines often developed burns, skin cancers, and even lost toes. By the 1950s, doctors realized that nuking people's feet probably wasn't great for business or public health, and the devices were quietly phased out. But not before tens of thousands of people got a shoe size and a side of ionizing radiation. Before antiseptics or anesthesia, medieval surgeons treated battle wounds with the only thing they knew: boiling oil. The logic was simple and horrifying. Pouring scalding liquid into a wound would seal it and prevent infection. Instead, it caused unimaginable pain, deep tissue burns, and almost guaranteed infection. Soldiers who survived their injuries often died from the treatment. Even battlefield surgeons admitted it was brutal, but they had no better ideas. It wasn't until the 16th century that French surgeon Ambroise Paré ditched boiling oil in favor of gentle ointments, and patients actually started surviving. Medicine, one small step away from literal torture. Want porcelain skin in the 1800s? Just take arsenic pills. Yes, the same stuff used in rat poison. Victorians believed that small doses could purify the complexion and give cheeks a rosy glow. And it worked, until it didn't. Symptoms ranged from nausea and hair loss to organ failure and death. But fashion was powerful, and many were willing to die to look pale and perfect. Today, we have Instagram filters. Back then, they had poison tablets. Progress, right? If you've ever seen someone stick a lit candle in their ear to draw out toxins, congratulations. You've witnessed one of the dumbest treatments still around today. Ear candling supposedly uses heat to create suction that removes earwax and improves health. In reality, it does nothing but drip hot wax into your ear canal and risk serious burns or perforated eardrums. Medical studies have repeatedly debunked it, yet wellness influencers keep the flame alive, literally. It's proof that pseudoscience is timeless. We might laugh at medieval toad necklaces, but people are still lighting candles in their heads in 2025. Before antibiotics, the go-to treatment for tuberculosis was fresh air. Patients were sent to sanatoriums, often in cold mountain regions, where they spent months or years lying outdoors, regardless of the weather. Doctors believed fresh air and rest could cure TB. While it sometimes helped with symptoms, it did little to fight the bacteria itself, and patients frequently froze, wasted away, or died. It wasn't until the discovery of antibiotics in the 20th century that TB treatment became effective. Until then, the best medicine was apparently go outside and hope for the best. Want to lose weight without dieting? Just swallow a tapeworm. Early 20th century ads promised that ingesting parasite eggs would help women stay slim by letting the worm eat their food for them. It was a real thing. And yes, some people actually tried it. But while you might lose a few pounds, you'd also suffer from malnutrition, organ damage, and potentially death as the parasite grew to several meters long. Tapeworms were eventually banned as a weight loss method, though incredibly, modern black markets still sell them today. Humans, learning nothing since the Stone Age. In the early 20th century, radiation wasn't feared, it was fashionable. Companies sold radioactive face creams, toothpaste, and soap, claiming they would rejuvenate skin, whiten teeth, and make you glow, literally. Brands like Thoradia became wildly popular among Europe's elite. Unfortunately, they did make people glow, but not in a good way. Users developed burns, ulcers, and cancers from repeated exposure. By the time science caught up, thousands had suffered radiation poisoning. If nothing else, it proves humans will rub anything on their faces in the name of beauty. Yes, you read that right. In the early 1900s, drugstores sold cocaine toothache drops for children. They were advertised as soothing, safe, and fast-acting. And they were, until the addiction, hallucinations, and heart problems kicked in. Parents routinely dosed toddlers with cocaine to stop teething pain. Doctors recommended it, and society shrugged. It took decades and thousands of addicted children before regulators banned cocaine from over-the-counter products. The moral of the story, if your cure leaves a toddler hallucinating, maybe rethink the formula. When blood transfusions were first attempted in the 1600s, scientists had no idea about blood types, or even that human and animal blood were incompatible. Their solution? Just inject whatever was available. Sheep blood into humans, calf blood into children. The results were catastrophic. Most patients died almost instantly from severe immune reactions. One Frenchman famously convulsed and died minutes after receiving lamb blood. The practice was eventually outlawed, and remained so for over a century. Only with the discovery of blood groups in the early 1900s did transfusions become safe. Until then, it was less life-saving science and more barnyard roulette. In one of the darkest chapters of modern medicine, doctors in the 20th century used electroshock therapy to try to cure homosexuality. Patients were shown same-sex images and then given painful electric shocks in an attempt to create aversion. It was barbaric, unscientific, and deeply traumatic. Victims suffered psychological scars, memory loss, and sometimes death. And of course, it didn't work, because homosexuality isn't a disease. This chapter of history is a sobering reminder that pseudoscience isn't confined to ancient times. Sometimes the dumbest medicine wears a lab coat and calls itself modern. We've seen poisons sold as beauty products, parasites prescribed as diet plans, and radiation marketed as self-care. But buckle up, the final 10 are the wildest, weirdest, and most disturbing treatments ever attempted. Medieval Europe had many bizarre remedies, but few are more disturbing than this. Boiling puppies alive to make a gout treatment. Yes, really. Physicians believed that the resulting puppy broth contained special healing properties that could draw excess uric acid out of the body. Patients would soak their swollen joints in the mixture or even drink it. Not only was this unspeakably cruel, it was completely ineffective. Gout is a metabolic condition, not something you can fix with puppy soup. It's a horrifying glimpse into a time when medical ethics weren't even a concept, and desperation overruled decency. Centuries ago, in parts of Africa, mental illness was thought to be caused by evil spirits trapped inside the head. The solution? Drive nails or spikes into the skull to let them out. This brutal ritual often killed the patient instantly or left them with permanent brain damage. But without understanding mental health, healers believed they were doing good. To them, the screams weren't evidence of torture, they were proof the spirit was leaving. It's hard to believe, but this wasn't unique. Similar skull-piercing rituals existed across multiple cultures, because apparently nothing says therapy like blunt force trauma. The Renaissance was full of brilliant discoveries, and also this. Europeans believed consuming powdered Egyptian mummies could treat everything from headaches to internal bleeding. Apothecaries ground up ancient remains, mixed them into drinks, and sold them as mummia. The demand was so high that grave robbers plundered tombs and even dug up freshly buried corpses to sell as fake mummies. The rich and powerful eagerly consumed these remedies, blissfully unaware they were literally eating people. It's hard to decide what's worse, the desecration of ancient remains or the fact that they thought cannibalism was a cure-all. Sometimes medical stupidity is simple. In Elizabethan England, one proven wart cure was to cut a mouse in half and press it against the wart. The belief was that as the mouse decayed, it would somehow draw the wart away with it. There's zero evidence this worked, unless you count the wart falling off from sheer disgust. But people swore by it, and the practice persisted for generations. It's one of many examples of sympathetic magic in medicine, the idea that like cures like. Apparently dead rodents and skin growths were close enough. The Romans loved their wine, and they loved it sweet. To achieve that, they boiled it in lead pots, which created a syrupy sweetener known as sapa. They then drank gallons of it daily. What they didn't know was that lead builds up in the body, causing neurological damage, infertility, gout, and death. Historians believe widespread lead poisoning contributed to Rome's decline, weakening its population over centuries. The empire that conquered the known world was slowly undone by sweet wine. Civilization, 0. Chemistry, 1. Before antibiotics, doctors fought syphilis with the next best thing, arsenic. The drug salvarsan, introduced in 1910, was hailed as a miracle cure, despite being highly toxic. While it occasionally slowed the disease, it also caused blindness, liver damage, and death. Patients endured agonizing treatments for weeks or months, hoping to survive long enough for the syphilis to go away. It was the best option available, until penicillin came along and cured syphilis without poisoning people. Progress can be measured by how much less deadly medicine becomes. Before germ theory, doctors believed that inhaling certain substances could purify the lungs. One popular method? Smoking tar and creosote. Patients with bronchitis or tuberculosis were told to breathe in thick, choking smoke because it would clear the airways. In reality, it caused chemical burns, worsened respiratory conditions, and often accelerated death. But the placebo effect was powerful, and patients swore they felt better, right up until they couldn't breathe at all. It's the 19th century equivalent of trying to clean a dirty room by starting a fire in it. If lobotomies weren't horrifying enough in hospitals, in the 1950s some companies marketed home lobotomy kits. Yes, devices regular people could use themselves. These psychosurgery tools promised relief from depression and anxiety right from your living room. The kits included instructions on where to insert the probe and how deep to go. Unsurprisingly, the results ranged from permanent brain damage to death. Even more shockingly, some people actually survived and claimed to feel better. It's a chilling reminder that human desperation and gullibility know no bounds. In the 1920s, men seeking a boost in virility turned to a cutting-edge solution, radium suppositories. These glowing little capsules were inserted rectally to restore energy, increase stamina, and reignite passion. Instead, they delivered lethal doses of radiation directly into delicate tissues, causing cancers, organ failure, and death. Yet they sold in huge numbers, because nothing sells like insecurity and pseudoscience. It's hard to imagine a worse idea. Radioactive material in one of the most sensitive parts of the body, all for a placebo effect. Talk about playing with fire. You'd think by the late 20th century, humanity would have left skull drilling in the past. Nope. In the 1970s, a bizarre New Age movement promoted self-trepanation, drilling holes in one's own skull, as a way to expand consciousness. Followers believed it increased blood flow to the brain and heightened awareness. Some performed the procedure at home with power tools, recording their spiritual awakenings. Others ended up in hospitals, or worse. It's astonishing that a practice from 7,000 years ago resurfaced in the era of space travel and color TV. Proof that stupidity doesn't just belong to the past, it evolves right alongside us. And there you have it, the 50 dumbest medical treatments people actually tried. From boiling puppies and eating mummies to injecting arsenic and inserting radioactive capsules, humanity's medical history is a mix of brilliance and breathtaking stupidity. It's easy to laugh now, but remember, these weren't jokes. People truly believed these treatments would heal them. And in a few centuries, people might look back at our medical practices with the same disbelief. So the next time you're grumbling about taking antibiotics or getting a shot, just be thankful your doctor isn't recommending a goat testicle transplant. Which of these treatments shocked you the most? Tell us in the comments below. And if you want more dark, ridiculous, and fascinating stories from history, subscribe, because at Brain Fart History, we never run out of humanity's worst ideas.